you can all fact check this. I expect your institute to take care of this and make any changes and note it. Today's speaker took a path that very few people take. She left a high-powered career in a Fortune 500 healthcare marketing job to join a journalism school. Sarah Sweeney spent nearly 2 decades building brands and launching products for some of the most sophisticated companies in the world. Edwards Life Sciences, On the Cell, Abbott, working across the United States and Europe. She was the kind of executive companies compete to hire. 2 years ago, she walked into the Poynter Institute for Media Studies in St. Petersburg, took on a very different mission. Her job now is to connect people with journalism, to build the community events and relationships that sustain one of the most important nonprofit institutions in American public life. Poynter is the world's most influential school of journalism. It owns the Tampa Bay Times, runs PolitiFacts, operates a fact-checking network in 80 countries, and reaches 151 million people with media literacy education. At a moment when trust in the press is deeply contested, Poynter's work and Sarah's work to amplify it matters to every democracy. Please join me in welcoming Sarah Sweeney from the Poynter Institute.
Right? That was wonderful. I should leave now. That was the nicest introduction I think I've ever received. I'm so happy to be here today. It's been a long time coming, but thanks to my dear friend Larry, he introduced me to the Rotary Club as a part of an introduction to Poynter, which I'll get into here, but I did want to start with just a thank you to Larry, so thank you so much. So Larry and I have known each other, I mean, truly since I was a child. He is very good friends with my dad. We have had family vacations together. He and Carol saved me when I was abandoned in Paris. Which sounds very dramatic. It was dramatic, but they did rescue me there. Since I moved to Florida, it's been wonderful because our families are closer and we're reconnected. And last year, Poynter had a museum tour that we took across the country. We held museum exhibits from Kansas City to New York to Washington, D.C., and right here in Sarasota at the Ringling Museum. So I was very excited during this exhibit because I knew I had the opportunity to invite Larry and Carol to join. And they attended our exhibit, and afterwards we had a great panel on how AI is influencing the media and communication in general. And after the panel was over, Larry walked over to me for the first time in his life, and he said, "Wow, what you're doing is so impressive." I said, "Yes, it is." So he was very inspired by the conversation that we had as a part of the AI panel. And since then, very blessed to have had many conversations about what Poynter is and the commitment that it has to upholding the First Amendment and a lot of different activities that revolve in and around journalism. So we thought it would be great today if we could spend some time introducing you guys to the Poynter Institute. I'm going to invite my colleague Erin Schrockman, who's our Vice President of Strategic Initiatives, to join me up here in a minute. But our goal is so that you guys can get to know Poynter. Poynter has been based in St. Petersburg, Florida for 50 years. How many of you have heard of Poynter before? Just a few. Okay, I'm impressed. This is a larger percent than most. Not enough people know about Poynter. And as a part of that really lovely introduction that you just gave, I had a very lucky and fortunate career in healthcare. But when I found out that Poynter was based here in St. Petersburg and the mission was so important and the work that Poynter does is so valuable and impactful, I have never worked harder on an interview in my life. I personally went and interviewed journalists. I found people that knew of the Institute and figured out ways that I could get these guys to hire me. And I feel so lucky that I get to work here and represent this company.
Good for you.
Yeah, it was great.
Set your mind to get it and you landed.
That's right. Thank you. It was worth it. I've been with Poynter now for 2 years. And I think one of the things we'll talk about today is what makes Poynter so special is it went from being a organization dedicated to training journalists to one that is dedicated to upholding the First Amendment in all facets of ways. We dedicate time to media literacy. We have experts that work at Poynter who understand the intricacies of how AI is transforming communication at large. We work with teachers across the world. In 2 weeks, Laura, who's here with us, is going to be throwing our largest event of the year. We host a meeting called Global Fact once a year. And at that meeting, we have 500 fact checkers from around the world, from 80 different countries, come and talk about fact checking. What are practices that should be applied? What are global pressures that everybody's facing? And how we can help sustain that important part of our society. So really today we want you guys to walk away having a good understanding of Poynter. We'd love to create some Poynter advocates so that we have some believers here in Sarasota. We don't think enough people here in this area know about us, and we want to change that. And we'd love to invite you to some programs that we have coming up. One of the things that Poynter is well known for is convening. We host events all the time. Next month in St. Petersburg on June 3rd, we're hosting a program where we have invited 2 journalists from Minneapolis to come and give a talk about how they and their newsrooms covered the ICE raids. So it's all very topical, important conversations that are happening globally and nationally and locally. And I think it would be great if you guys had an in, you do now, so you can decide which programs you want to join. But I'd love to invite Aaron up here, and he can give you a better introduction of Poynter, answer questions. And before I do that, do you guys have any questions for me? Anything you really want to understand about Poynter before we turn it over?
How did you hear about Poynter?
So that's a great question. I have been a long time lover of journalism. And honestly, my number one resource for journalism is Reddit, which is a social media community. On Reddit, I was reading a very hot thread about a local news story that had broken. And then somebody commented in that thread about how the Poynter Institute was having an event about it. And I was like, what's the Poynter Institute? So I went and looked it up. And then, like I said, I kind of kept pulse on the company. It happened to be right downtown from where I lived in St. Petersburg in a condo. And as soon as they had this marketing job open, I'm telling you, I went for it. I gave everything I had. And I've had such a good time since I've been able to join.
And so did Erin interview you?
I did.
We want to hear how that interview went. She was prepared.
She was very prepared. I think my honest answer, it was amazing in the way that Sarah learned about Poynter, that we learned that, a high-powered marketing professional was living down the street from us. And so it was kismet for both of us, I think. And so it was a really great discussion, and we're excited to have Sarah on our team, of course, and help make this lovely introduction to you all. So
It's a happy story.
yeah, I'm Aaron Schrockman. I'm the Vice President of Partnerships at Poynter. I'm also the Executive Director at PolitiFact. Lifelong journalist, graduated from journalism school. Always knew I wanted to be a journalist. The only job I've had that isn't journalism is I worked one summer at a golf course, driving the golf carts around. That was fun, but would not pay the bills. So not sure journalism does either, but I guess it'll have to do. It's great to be with you all today. I want to spend a little time telling you about Poynter. I think the story of Poynter is remarkable, and I love telling it, so bear with me. The Poynter Institute was founded by a guy named Nelson Poynter. Nelson Poynter was a journalist from Indiana. He covered World War II, not as famous as Ernie Pyle, but did get his boots on the ground covering the war. And his family owned newspapers in Indiana. And upon returning, he knew he wanted to enter the newspaper business, and he bought then the St. Petersburg Times. This is the late 1940s, post-World War II. And he then devoted himself to a life of building news and believing in newspapers. And he is an amazing man I never met, by the way. But I know people who knew him and have met him, and there are fewer of those today. In the 1940s, he even then saw where I think the journalism business was heading and where the news industry was headed. And when you read his writings, he makes a couple of really important points. He said, for instance, as early as 1947, that the owner of the newspaper should live in the city of the newspaper, and that everyone who reads that newspaper should have access to that owner. Why did he say that? Because he believed that the newspaper was a piece of the community. Not a business, not a tool, not a device to make money, but a piece of the community. Even then, in 1947, he was very fearful of the idea of corporatization of media. He believed that corporate owners ultimately would not have the best interests of the community at heart. I think we might agree that's probably true. And so he went on, and he said, so Nelson only owned the newspaper, the St. Petersburg Times. He never bought a second newspaper. He didn't own two. He owned one because it was his passion and his love. He ran the newspaper for, well, in this case, a little over 35 years. And he ran it at a time when I think we could also all agree it was quite profitable. And one of the things that was really interesting is as he was getting older, he thought about what the industry needed. And another of his great points and thoughts was, if we don't innovate, we will dwindle and die. Talking about journalism and the journalism industry, the idea that we just couldn't rest on our laurels. And so a couple of years before he died, he decided to create an institute. It was originally called the Modern Media Institute. It bore his name after his death. But he built it for a couple of reasons. One, I'll be completely honest, tax shelter. You know, money can move to the nonprofit rather than go to the government. Two, but equally as important, or probably more important, professional journalists needed training. Journalists it's not a certified or regulated industry. If you're a lawyer, you have to go back and get training. If you're a teacher, you have to go back and get training. If you're a plumber, you have to go back and get training. If you're a journalist, you don't need training at all, but journalism schools, colleges provide it. But really after that, there was nothing for professional journalists to learn about how the field has evolved or innovated. So he created the Modern Media Institute with this in mind. He, unfortunately, dies 18 months or so after the Institute is opened. Upon his death, they rename it the Poynter Institute. And upon his death, he does something that is truly heroic and, at the time, just unimaginable. He gives the newspaper to the Institute, the nonprofit. He gifts it to it. Again, at the time, the newspaper was very, very profitable. He had kids, he had grandkids. They probably had an interest in wanting the newspaper, but he gave it to the school. He said, at the time of his death, I have not yet met my great-grandchildren, and I might not like them. What Nelson meant by that, besides maybe not liking his great-grandchildren, is what he knew is that the passion he had for newspapers and journalism wouldn't last forever in his family. And thinking back to what he said in 1947, he didn't want his newspaper to be absorbed into a corporation because he knew it wouldn't be good for that community. So, as his dying request, he gave the newspaper, a very profitable enterprise at that time, to the Nonprofit Institute. So for 25 years of the heyday of newspapers, the newspaper made money. He gave it to the Poynter Institute. The Poynter Institute operated as such as a public charity, teaching and training thousands of journalists each year on ethics, photojournalism, page design at the time, leadership. Fast forward to 2001, really, the newspaper industry starts its decline. Rise of the internet, rise of Craigslist, started taking advertising money from newspapers. Shortly thereafter, then you have 2008, subscriptions start to rapidly decline. The profits of the newspapers shrunk, disappeared, went away. Poynter at that time had grown from working in a little bank building to taking over this beautiful building, which we still have today, and I welcome you all to visit in St. Petersburg. We've grown to a staff of about 85 to 90 people. Over those years between 2000 and about 2012, we first spent through all the reserves, gone, and then we had to make deep cuts. Poynter shrunk to about the size of about 30 people. We looked like we were on a precipitous decline and maybe not going to be in existence for too much longer. The good news is we're still here. And we have done, I think, a very successful job in redefining what we are and what we do. We still serve journalists, number one. Between 40 and 50,000 journalists each year train with Poynter, many online. They can take online classes in writing, editing, reporting. They can come to our building in St. Petersburg for a week-long seminar on leadership or ethics or managing people. We go around the world and teach journalists around the world in places like Lithuania, as we will be next month. But in addition, we understood and realized that in the modern times, everyone with a phone is committing acts of journalism. Every day you see something, you might take a photo of it, you share it on your social media network, you hope people engage with it, read it, comment it, see it. Those are all the basic acts of journalism. And so there was an epiphany for us, maybe in 2017 or 2018, that we can train everybody. Everyone can learn to be a better journalist, because if you're a good journalist, if you practice the good principles of journalism, not only will you post better content, but you'll also be able to tell what the good stuff is from the bad stuff, the high quality information versus the low quality information. So in 2018, we launched MediaWise. In 2018, we also became the home of PolitiFact, the political fact-checking website. And through those projects, we have reached, Sarah said it, Ari said it, 151 million people now, more than. In election season, PolitiFact is more popular than NFL.com or Disney.com. So for just a couple months, we're more popular than Mickey Mouse and or Tom Brady, which I think is pretty impressive. But really, Poynter has become, I think, a place where we see ourselves as kind of the center of the wheel, where everyone can come to conversations about difficult issues, tough issues, policy, politics, whatever, but also kind of rooted in fact. That's what we try to do. We're not teaching you what to believe. We don't care. You think what you want. I don't have a problem with that. But I want us to have a basis of shared common understanding. So maybe what I'll do is I'll give you just a little spiel about that, because I think it's helpful. I'm going to give you one major tip. When you go online, how many of you use Facebook? Some of you. Anyone avoid Facebook? Any Facebook avoiders? A couple of you. Yeah, I understand. What I would say is, when you see something online, whether it's Facebook or anywhere else, when you read something that you don't agree with, you're very naturally skeptical of it. Your brain is wired to say, I don't believe that's true, and I'm going to go do my research to figure out why it's wrong. Your brain is great. Your brain fails when it sees something that it agrees with. It doesn't process it the same way. You don't have the natural skepticism. Your defenses are down. Okay? So take whatever issue and put it in your head. You see something that agrees how you see that issue, you're more likely to share or like or comment or post. I see this in my own family all the time. And that's where you get in trouble most times, because you're likely to share something that may be wrong. It doesn't affect how you believe things, but it does promote false facts that change the narrative. Now, let's add on the additional layer, which is all of those social media platforms. They're all designed not to promote truth or facts. They're designed to keep you there. If you love cats, lots of pictures of cats, right? If you think the earth is flat, lots of information about a flat earth. They're designed with that in mind, so you stay there, they make money, you're happy, all of that stuff, right? And so we have that additional layer of problems, which is your brain is not skeptical of things that it sees that it believes to be true, and you're in a community where all that information is being amplified and echoed by others who also believe the same thing to be true. So we got to break out of that cycle. We got to break out of that cycle. Now, I'll say this. Every Thanksgiving, I'm sure, most of you probably go to a dinner, and I'm sure at that dinner, there are some people you don't see eye to eye with, I would guess, hypothetically. And this is for me, true, too. And every Thanksgiving, I have to make a decision, which is, do I just eat my pie, drink my glass of wine, and be quiet, let it go, or do I engage? And my advice, on top of trying to break out of those two first cycles that I talked about, is do engage. Don't engage in the way that you're wrong, or it's not going to be helpful or beneficial, but have a conversation with somebody. I was having breakfast today where the conversation was all around, I'm in a group of people. I know that we probably all cancel each other out of the voting booth. That's fine. I understand that we all have different positions on whatever issue of the day. That's fine. But at the end of the day, we can have a conversation about it in a way that it isn't like, I'm not insulting your family or not insulting my family. It's a conversation about the issues. And through that conversation, how can we get to some base effect, some common fact that we can work on together? That's what the Poynter Institute tries to do every day for journalists, in teaching them how to tell stories more effectively, more accurately, with high ethical integrity, transparently, but also for citizens. So we can bring people together to have conversations about tough issues. Like next month, we'll be talking about ICE activities in Minneapolis. Not something that everyone necessarily wants to have with their coffee and tea, but something that I think is important because it shapes our country not only today, but in the future. So Poynter Institute is, at its core, protecting democracy and access to information. And we do it through a lot of different ways, both directly with journalists, working and helping promote journalists and good journalism, working directly with citizens and anyone who's interested. And I guess I'll just close there by saying we're happy to continue this conversation with you, answer any questions you have, talk about nothing's off limits as far as I'm concerned. So whatever's on your mind, have at it.
Questions? So one of the things that occurs to me is,
I can't hear you.
yeah, I can't hear you. One of the things, a question that I have is, I agree with, educating the general public. And, this AI and Facebook and the Snapchat and Instagram, it's not gonna go away. Have you folks thought about entering into the educational system? Because not all parents are going to be equipped with this type of knowledge, and they won't be able to educate their children to a fairly good extent. Is this something you folks thinking about?
So for the online audience, the question is about, have we thought about entering the educational system and working more directly with students? The answer is yes, but it's challenging. So there's first the, it is a fact today, unfortunately, that our line of work is seen sometimes as combative to the political landscape in this state in particular. So actually getting into the school system is a challenge. So, but if we could get over that hurdle, we would like to. We do work with PBS, and PBS has a educational platform that distributes educational materials to teachers, and teachers use our materials in schools every day across the country. But it's not mandated, it's voluntary, right? So a teacher can choose to. We have talked about ways to get into schools. What we have done to date is a little different tactic, which is how do we, because getting into schools is a barrier for us. We have thought about working directly with students. So one of the things we have at Poynter is a group called the Teen Fact Checking Network, which we're now going to rename something else. Forget it, doesn't matter. But every semester, we work with about 25 to 30 teenagers, so 13 through 18. We teach them the skills of how to find good information and expose what is bad information. We also teach them how to create compelling video content. And so they're creating content and sharing it in their platforms on Snapchat, on Instagram, on TikTok, talking to their friends and their communities in their own words. And so we've really made an effort to kind of reach students directly, kind of working around kind of the institutions, just because it can be difficult to get institutions to work with us. One other partnership we are doing is we're working with libraries across the country. So we find libraries as still a space where a lot of this information is welcome, and obviously people are there seeking out good information. And so we've been working with library systems and hopefully reaching a lot of kids that way as well.
So your mission,
Speak louder.
your mission of promoting accuracy in the press is viewed as a combative activity by the state?
I think Mom's really.
Really? I mean, I understand.
Sure,
That's why they have a bias, but against accuracy?
I think so. I'm not going to speak for others, but I think there is no doubt that in today's culture, categories of people think the press is by itself biased, and therefore producing biased information, and therefore can't. So while we would say we're helping you get accurate information, others would say, no, you're actually, producing biased information. We disagree with that, but that's the argument, which is pretty hard to prove or disprove because it's all based on feel, really, not stuff. But.
Question is, do you try your hardest to remain neutral, or do you pick a hot topic of the moment that concerns a lot of people?
Yeah. So the question was, how do we stay neutral, and are we focusing on, your words, the hot topic of the moment? So I do think that a lot of the work we do is directly responding to what citizens, voters, people are interested in. So in that sense, yeah, I do think we pick the hot topics, the topics that people want to read and learn more about. Within that, I think that journalists, again, we're not a licensed profession, so it's not like you can be like, oh, this person is a journalist and they have a certification that says so. I think sometimes we have a hard time defining what a journalist is. But the journalist, in the sense that I am, spend a lot of my time making sure that I am covering all my bases before I write anything I write. It doesn't mean that this side and this side get the same amount of time in my article, but it means that I've considered all the perspectives. So the way I think about journalism, a good journalist is doing, let's take a topic. Why is traffic so bad on I-75? Okay, so a good journalist is answering a question that you probably have in your mind, but you don't have the time to figure out. And so I'm going to help you understand that issue. And yeah, it might have a perspective. The answer might be, it's because there's too many cars on the road, or there's not enough, we haven't built enough lanes, or whatever the issue, whatever the reason is. I'm allowed to have I don't want to say perspective. I'm allowed to answer the question. I'm allowed to say it's bad on I-75 right now because, rather than just say, here are all the reasons it could be bad, and here's this person's perspective and this person's perspective. My job is to kind of be your expert and help you answer those questions. And that might give you, what's interesting about the journalism, we're talking about this today as well, journalism will make you angry. It will make you uncomfortable. We're different than the arts in your community, which is like, oh, I love the arts. Great, the museum is lovely. I love museums. But sometimes I'm going to write a story that I believe is truthful, accurate, highly ethical, that will tick you off. That's part of our mission too, because we're trying to be the truth tellers in the community, not because we know everything, because we spend the time that most people don't have candid.
How do you gauge the feedback or the reaction of what you have put forth? And another question tag on that. If you know that what you have, the facts that you have put forth are not being taken seriously,
Sure.
given dire circumstances of something that you know needs to get done for the good of society, politically and otherwise, you know the feedback is kind of weak.
Yeah.
Okay, in other words, do you find yourself stick to that topic and try to dig deeper, or do you let it go?
Sure. So the question, yeah, that's a good question. So number one, I think if you're a younger journalist, that affects you more. That like I'm trying to help and no one's listening to me.
Yeah.
Maybe my perspective is just a little different, but the way I see it is my job is to help give you access to high quality information. It's up to you to do with what you want, right? So one of the examples is I worked for PolitiFact, the fact-checking website, and in the election of 2016, it's just empirically true. Donald Trump told made more false statements than Hillary Clinton. And someone said to me afterwards, well, Aaron, see, you lost. Fact-checking doesn't matter. See, you said he lied more, but he won. And I said, that's not what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm trying to get you the best information. I mean, when it comes to voting, I don't know if you even want the most honest politician at this point. I don't know. Maybe you do, but there might be other things that motivate you. So I don't, my thought there would be simply, I am trying to give you the best information possible. I want to make sure you have access to it. If for some reason I thought that I wrote a story that you didn't see or consider, that I might write another one to help you kind of clearly understand it. But I'm not going to, I don't have an agenda to try to change your opinion, right? Like if I can write you a story about smoking causes cancer, but you still smoke, it's like that's not my job to change your decision. It's my job to give you the information. You do with what you want.
So along with the fact checking, do you also have something in place where you're not going to take advantage of
I can't hear you.
other people? So it's in addition to fact checking, do you also have sort of like a guideline where you're also making sure that you're not taking advantage of people's emotions, pulling them in? It's not this big marketing scam kind of thing, so
Sure.
that you want them to buy.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question basically is, besides fact checking, are we as journalists, or do we take advantage of people emotionally? Essentially, what I would tell you is there are plenty of people who would consider themselves journalists who do that, and I think that's wrong. But again, it comes back to we're an unregulated industry. And what I would start with is if you look at Facebook, go through Facebook. I don't pick whatever news you consider credible or truthful, right? It doesn't matter the outcome. Take that and see how it looks on Facebook, and then take something really low quality, low level. It looks exactly the same. We don't know the difference. The White House press briefing room right now has the New York Times and CNN and Fox News with, just random bloggers. I mean, that's what they are, random bloggers. And so whatever you think about who all those people are and what those organizations are, what I can tell you is the level of journalism ethics and the way it is applied is vastly different place by place by place, but no one's advertising that on their door, you know? So for a consumer, it's really hard to tell the difference between when I'm being manipulated and when I'm getting it straight, so to speak. And I think that's one of the things we try to do at MediaWise is to help you in individual cases understand, you're being manipulated here and here's why, versus here you're getting it straight. The problem is there's no universal body that says bad, good, and there is no real easy way for a consumer or reader to quickly identify. And that's part of the trick, part of the problem.
There's somebody on Zoom wanting to ask a question.
Okay, yeah, sorry, and Lisa had her hand up too. My question is, with AI being so prevalent, how do you help people sort through what's real and what isn't real? I mean, it's hard to trust anything nowadays because of that.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question. So, there's a great book that I recommend called The Constitution of Knowledge, and it was really written before the AI period of our life, but it applies so greatly. The bad guys aren't trying to trick us. They are, but they're not necessarily trying to get us to believe that the Earth is flat, or that we have 3 moons, or that Neil Armstrong didn't walk on the moon. What they're trying to do is throw so much stuff at us that we all throw our hands up and say, I don't know what to believe now. I give up, right? And this is exactly what's happening with AI. The images and videos are getting so much more realistic so quickly that we're getting to a point where whatever we see online, it's very hard for us to just, number one, to discern if it's real or fake. And number two, because it's hard to discern, we just kind of say, I'm going to stop paying attention now. I'm going to tune out. My argument is we have to kind of think a little more abstractly and think a little higher level. And in the pursuit of knowledge is long and hard. The pursuit of information is short and easy. Lots and lots of information exists. We have to try to whittle it down as a community into knowledge. And so this is kind of theoretical and conceptual, but it's how I see the world. We have lots of information right now. A lot of it is wrong, AI slop. Over time, and because of communities like this, communities of people who care, we will over time scrub that information and be left with knowledge. There's not instant gratification to that because it doesn't happen in 10 seconds, but over time we'll be in a better place. So my honest answer is be patient, keep asking having those difficult conversations in your groups, questioning things, be skeptical about things you believe as much as things you don't believe, and we'll get ourselves to a better spot.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
5-minute wrap up. Maybe at least. Okay.
Lisa, I think we'll have to connect with you after, but I really look forward to connecting. It sounds like we'll have a potential program together there. Well, thank you, Erin. That was a great overview of Poynter. I'm really grateful you guys had such good questions. It's the information ecosystem affects all of us, and so I expected this group to be curious and have questions, and I really welcome you to follow up with any questions. I'm going to send Barry some information about Poynter that he'll share with all of you, and it will include my contact information. So if you guys have any direct questions you want to ask, I really encourage you to follow up. A lot of what Erin talked about is big picture, what Poynter is focused on, and it reminds me of a conversation that we had actually with Larry. And Larry asked Neil Brown, who's the president of Poynter. Neil was the editor-in-chief of the Tampa Bay Times for many years. During that time, they won 9 Pulitzer Prizes. He's highly accomplished. He was on the Pulitzer board for many years. And Larry and Neil were chatting, and Larry said, when are we going to get back to the days of Walter Cronkite? When are we all going to sit in front of the TV? We have a trusted source. Yeah. And Neil said, never. We're never getting back to that day. And that's why Poynter exists. We're here to address all of the different facets of media consumption and to help make sure that everyday citizens continue to have access to information that they can trust. It matters. Maria Ressa says that truth is the foundation of our shared reality. And I really believe that. And I'm so proud to be a part of this institute as a part of that. So I hope you guys are inspired by Poynter. I hope you'll join us at some of our events. I talked about the June 3rd. I also want to say we have a big event every year called the Bowtie Ball. This year it will be November 14th. Last year we honored Polly. In previous years we've honored Anderson Cooper. it's a great opportunity for you guys to come and meet some of the big industry media names of our century. And we hope that you guys will join us. So thank you, Larry, for this opportunity, and Barry. And we're so grateful. And I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. For those, the Poynter has a newsletter, a daily newsletter that goes out that's really very interesting. So you can go online, sign up for it, and it just comes to your email box. Couldn't be easier.